I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are speaking with author Bob Nienaber about his wonderful books, American Bloodline, The King's Curse, and American Bloodline, The Rightful Heir Reclaims Europe. Through the character of Charlie, this author takes readers on a journey through a mystical lineage that fights to protect humans from unseen demonic ideology. We are delighted to have Bob in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Bob, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Logan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all mine. I know this book is a labor of love. You're a finance guy with your background, but this is sci-fi, historical fiction, kind of mixed genre. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Tell the folks at home what it's all about, American Bloodline.
You know, I stumbled into this about 25 years ago. I had the Israeli government, through a location in Southern California, reached out to me and said, hey, you need to check out this Bloodline. They knew me through other contacts in the financial world. You know, I looked at what they had and what they were telling me, and I said, this can't be real, can't be possible. You know, looked further, went through a couple of genealogist groups to find out if there was some relations to some of these things, because there were really kind of some mystic stories that started with the departure of the Benjamins from Israel, and then they eventually, you know, there wasn't a lot of historical records kept, but there was a lot of burial patterns and things like that dictated that you could really see from a historian where these people actually had died and were buried along the road just by cultural burials and those types of things. They ended up going down the trail to northern Germany, modern day northern Germany, where most people said because of a lot of their traits, they became the Merovingians. Merovingians were kind of a mystical group, if you will. They had a dose of Poseidon in there, as Poseidon came upon the queen of the Merovingians on the waters outside of northern Germany. They had children, and from that point in time, there were some kind of mystical characteristics that you would say. You know, in modern world stuff, we look at things like sight, sound, smell as our senses. Well, it seemed that a lot of their offspring from that point in time really became had the ability to see auras, to kind of see speed slow down in the world, had a really sense of not only the conscious mind, but also the subconscious mind. And when you read the historical backgrounds of Jesus, a lot of these same characteristics were in him. And of course, Jesus was part of the Benjamin's line. He's part of the Essenes. And so the same lineage existed in these parts. After you know, when you think back of it, Logan, the actual Merovingians were considered or called the barbarians from the Romans. And they met at a battle which ended really Roman rule. And then later, they became part of the same bloodline that became Charlemagne, part of the same bloodline that became King John, who wrote the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta became the Mayflower Accord, became the Bay Colonies Accord in the U.S., and ultimately became you know, a big part of our Constitution in the U.S. And so, and anything these guys seemed to touch, it was normal. They all had ruling powers, all the kings and queens. In fact, the Plantagenets that rule England today, part of the same family. But they also had kind of, and I think because they were connected in through the subconscious, they had a full use of their mind instead of just the human side. And so it opened up a lot of doors. As I looked further and further into this, and I met the character that's involved in this family and in this story, you know, it opened my eyes up to really mysticism as well as historical significance that still exists today, and we don't see it. It walks among us. You know, got to go out and see the Qumran crawl, which is a 3/4 mile hole crawling into the same holes where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, it said that that's the Devil's Abyss, where all the nastiest, most fierce archangels live. And it became Charlie's lot in life. Charlie's the main character in the whole process and the family and the story. to turn these characters around to kind of rid the world of evil. And so it's very fascinating. And during that whole process, what I learned was I thought it was just a story. I thought it was just an interesting story, kind of surrounded by reality of historical prominence, as well as a lot of mysticism. But what I found is the King's Curse is really a love story, because what happens is, and I can't say what happens in the end, but Charlie gives everything that he learns, just like a lot of his forefathers gave everything that they learned and created and all that. They turned it around for the love of the other people in the world, to get rid of the evil. Charlie actually ends up possessing a lot of the bad stuff, takes it away. Same thing when you think of go back to the Magna Carta, probably one of the greatest documents ever written, or at least it started giving out freedom along the way. King John didn't really want to sign it, but he did sign it. He's in that family lineage. He's a real person. And post signing it changed the world. Wasn't always the nicest guy on earth, but his actions changed the world. And so did Charlemagne's and a lot of these characters that are in this bloodline completely changed the world. So it's been fascinating to learn about, to go see, to visit. I've had opportunities to go into some very interesting areas, oftentimes dangerous areas, just to see how these people kind of walk through life untouched. And it's, so it's been very fun writing about it. It's becoming a movie script right now. Some significant people have taken up the role of turning it into either a series or a full set of movies. Either which way, it's been fascinating to write.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if it's talked about going on the screen, whether it's big or small, although there is no small screen anymore, I think my home TV is as big as most theaters. Who would play Charlie?
That's not going to be. Hopefully, that's not my choice. I lived in the Hollywood area, in the Malibu area, for about 12 years, and I was always on the business side. I was always, managing money or handling money, that type of thing. That's my background. I've talked to a lot of producers that want to take part in creating this. Was shocked with one of the names that called me. That's just an absolute international fame, and I'd love for them to do it. They're writing the screenplay on it right now. I don't know who's going to play these parts, and I don't want to even be in that selection. The one thing that I really won't have, though, is during the contracting period, is for them to change the reality of the story. And it's just like any story. You've got a lot of structural reality, and then you have some flair to spice up story parts that are very interesting, but they need a little flavor to them. And the book's been very nice. It's been compared to the Da Vinci Code and Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth books, and that of course motivated sales. We pre-sold, I don't know, I think 30,000 books in Asia and a bunch in the Middle East, and so everything's going well with that. It really changes your vision of what you might think religion is when you read it, what you might think God is, what you might kind of think that operates the world. Is very different, and that's the historical reality of it. And so when you see this stuff, as I've got a chance to witness it in my travels, it forever changes your life. You can't take back what you've seen and turn that back. So to answer your question simply, I have no idea who's going to play Charlie. That's the number one question. I'm an international speaker on the financial side of things, and I'll get on stage and I'll do a presentation in the finance sector, and the first 5 questions are, who's Charlie? Where's he at? It's something that I have to keep to myself and play it along. But it's been a fascinating process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was it like writing these books? They kind of have a life of their own. They're very epic in their scope. I'd imagine it was quite an adventure for you to get into that headspace of putting this all down on the computer.
It was very interesting. So the first book, the Rightful Heir Reclaims Europe. that I write a lot. I get up every day. I always have at 3:30 in the morning, and from 3:30 to about 6:30, I write and read. And I just kind of do it as a pastime. I've written, I guess, 5 books directly and a bunch of business books, and that I've done, parts and pieces to. I will tell you, The King's Curse was the easiest, or excuse me, the first book of the American Bloodline was the easiest book. It felt like I wasn't even writing it. I was, it just came together. It came together so fast. Within
Felt
a
like
month,
revelation that it was just coming to you.
yeah, I was more of a reader and a witness and writing it down, and it was very weird when I was first given the ask to write this book. I didn't grow up a writer. I didn't grow up in a family of writers, and they asked me, and I said no. They asked me again. Another group asked me. I said no. 3 times asked me, and then finally I said okay. And within a month, everything was on paper and done. It came together very quickly.
Wow.
The King's Curse was much more of an eye-opening. I would say the first book, the Rightful Heir Reclaims Europe, was an eye-opening to a lot of this information, and it took me a couple of years to really understand what was happening. Writing The King's Curse, that storyline came to me easy, very simple. The challenge was it was the first time I had ever written a sequel on a book, and so you have to make the assumption that somebody's going to pick up The King's Curse, which is the second book prior to the first book, and so you have to make it make sense. You have to go back and bring out the story from the first book, so the people that have read the first book have the connectivity. That part was quite different, and that was more difficult. And I was busy. I had some trips that I took over in Europe, and I went over to Kiev during kind of the earlier stages of the bombings and war for some other parts of things that I'm working on. And so, but writing the second book, which I think is actually much more relevant to the whole story. I don't think you can just read the first story and stop, because I think the second part, once you see the love story and understand what's going on, to me, it's absolutely amazing the way it came together. And I'm not saying that because I wrote it. Just reading the stuff that was presented to me was earth-shattering, and I loved every second of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It does have that feel. It feels like very organic. Like this was a story that has always been, and you're just relating it. So it kind of has a timeless quality about it, which is what I loved. Is there going to be a third installment?
There's maybe. how's that? So one of the characters inside of The King's Curse is a very real individual. And that person was made themselves extremely available to me during the whole process. Made sense out of a lot of stuff in the whole love genre and all that kind of stuff. There's a love story in both books that are both based on complete reality. And as somebody writing something, I never envisioned myself to write a story that would include something like that, especially a history book. And I've gotten so many warm compliments, because they're like, it really does explain what real love is, the whole thing. So I've just had a lot of really amazing experiences, and because of that, you really can't just turn that off. That flame's in there. There's much more to the story, and I know some of the Hollywood producers have already caught on to that, and so they want me to go into some of the side stories and bring out new information for them. So that's why I say there might be, a lot of the same passion that exists that took place with Israel and Jesus and the Charlemagne and all those folks. It exists in many other parts of our world, and that was one of the reasons why I went to Kiev during the war. It was very interesting being in the city while they're actively being bombed and seeing how that goes, and watching the energy and amazement of the people. So there's a lot of stories. And one of the challenges I give to people is, if you look at your history, it's not just a bunch of old dead names. If anybody looks in their history and really digs, they're probably going to find some very fascinating things.
Yeah.
And, as I went through Charlie's lineage and dug into really his background and what's published and what's out there, I was constantly amazed with the information that was both presented to me and what the genealogy groups found, as well as other historians had found. This is absolutely fun to do.
Yeah, it is amazing when you search one's bloodlines. I won't bore you with mine, but I did trace mine back a little bit. And the very first Crawford was called Thor the Tall. And as a man who's 6'6", I was like, that's interesting. And then Sir William Wallace's mother was a Crawford, and her brothers fought alongside Braveheart. So there was fascinating stuff when we looked at the Crawford lineage. Have you looked at your lineage? Was that part of the inspiration for the book?
When you go through, of course, you always talk to the genealogist when they're looking at your stuff to see what's out there. And yeah, I've looked at it. I've looked at a lot of it. My lineage goes back to the early days of the United States, and when we were still not discounting the American Indians, of course, or the Native Americans. But as far as the Europeans coming into America, my family was on the early parts of that. And that was interesting. So there's a lot of history. They came from a very affluent side. And then on my mom's side, her family doesn't go back too far. They were in Czechoslovakia, so they got cut off. So, during the Germans, they got rid of a lot of the files that existed and all that kind of stuff. But even with some of those little stories, you look at yourself and you're like, oh, this is a trait I have. Right. This is something I am. And you see your traits being kind of put forth during the 13, 14, 1500s, and you go, oh, that's how I would have acted in that point in time. So yeah, it's just fun. And I encourage people to look at their own stories. That's one of the greatest things you can get from this is look at your own stories. You'd be amazed on what you find, and you'd be amazed on who you really are.
Absolutely. Part of the book, of course, is this unseen demonic ideology. Tell us a little bit about why that's in the book and what you hope to convey to readers.
It really, what I learned from that, Logan, is that's the deepest expression of love that I've ever seen. So the Devil's Abyss or the Qumran Crawl or whatever you want to call it, many people had tried to go in there, and the energy around that was so strong people couldn't get beyond 75 feet in the hole. And Charlie had to go in about 4,200 feet into the hole. When this happened, there were a lot of things that were taped about the event and all that information. So when he came out, there was a lot of things that he witnessed, felt, smelt, breathed, the whole thing, that were very life-changing. And I always looked at all of these different types of things as events, as, just kind of crazy things that happen in the world. And what amazed me was the people that were behind the scenes that actually knew about this stuff and actually encouraged these types of events to happen and actually took information away upon completion. It really opens your eyes and you start to realize, but the biggest thing that I noticed in every character that was involved in Charlie's background, it was really for a position of love and influence and changing the world into a positive place. I've never seen anything like that where people give up, their freedom, their rights, their world the way it sits. And these are people that are wealth beyond belief. They don't need anything. They don't want for anything, but they're doing it to make the world a better place. And that's where you kind of back up and you go, I get it now. And so that's why I say The King's Curse is really a love story. It's a culmination of both books, but it's really a love story at a level that is absolutely 100% not imaginable, not comparative in anything I've ever seen. And so that's what makes it extremely fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned that you're an avid reader. Is there an author who's been an influence on you or a book that's been an influence on you?
I usually read about 80 books a year. So, yeah, there's been a ton of them. But I read every genre that's out there. If it's a bad book, I'll read it. If it's a good book, I'll read it. I've done a lot of book signings around the world on the first book. The second one, of course, just came out a couple of months ago, and so that'll start up. And so when I go out there, people know who I am now, so they'll give me their books to read, which is great. I don't have to buy books anymore. So, but I pretty much read anything. I've always looked at it as kind of exercise for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. It gives me ideas that are different. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't, unless it's a really special show or something like that. I never watch news because I just, it doesn't make me feel good. Anything interesting though, I'll get in front of and read if it's really good. If it's a book, I will love to read, especially if it's written well. It makes a lot of fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have your own website as well, bobnienaber.com. And tell the folks at home what that's all about.
There's a couple websites out there. You can see, you can go to bobnienaber.com, where you can buy a book. There's another website, bobnienaberfilms.com, where you can see the trailers for the movies that are in process. It's got some of the old books, some of my old stuff that I wrote years ago got picked up on these. And, it's like I say, I self-published. They're getting picked up by regular publishing houses and all that kind of stuff, which is great because I'm just not from the book world as far as being a literacy person and running my business and getting attorneys and so it's neat that that's taken off, but you'll see kind of the happenings of what's going on. I'm a pretty active person. You'll see more and more books come out over the years. I just enjoy that. It's an element that I picked up on. The goal is to come out and write a couple of new books every year and just enjoy what the world has to offer. People that know me, they think I'm pretty wild. I do a lot of, if there's a car to race, if there's a motorcycle to race, mountain bikes, anything outside that's exciting, I will do. I get that from my mother who had me take her parachuting when she turned 80.
Wow.
But I believe in living life to the fullest and learning what you can and getting as much information out of it. And don't look at life the same way that you and I were taught as kids, because it's, although good, well intended by the parents, it probably wasn't 100%, all there was out there. And there's so much more to find. And so people will get a flavor of that when they get to know me through the books or through just reading some of these things and all that.
Absolutely. Do you have more than 24 hours a day? I mean, I'm joking because you're up at 3:30 in the morning, writing till 6 in the morning. You're reading a book and a half a week. Do you sleep?
I do. And actually I sleep very well. I just, but I get my 4 hours. I know every health expert in the world says, oh, you're going to fall over dead. I've done this since I was, since I can remember 3-4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, I'm the personality that every morning when I wake up, I am happy as heck that I'm awake again because there's some new adventure that I haven't seen. I'm a child at heart. I'm in my 50s, but I really operate like I'm 10. I play football with my girlfriend's son, and he's 10, and I think we're about the same age. I run around all the time. I still mountain bike all the time. Before COVID, I was doing competitive mountain bike racing. I travel the world. I'm going out to Monte Carlo here in a month or so to see the Formula One race. Then I'm going to go up and see my daughter who lives in Prague. So, I'm just all over the place, and I really do wake up every single day, and I'm excited to be here. I don't waste a lot of time on, nasty, ugly things that don't help you go down the direction you want. But in business, we've talked in business. I've won many international awards, made millions in the business. That's not what it's about. It's about finding your fun, and everything else will come together. But there's and I do always look at it though, and it's a funny question that you asked. I do wish I had more time because I just love being out there every single day.
That's great. That's great. You embrace life. It shows in the way you talk. It shows in your writing for sure. I find it interesting that you do write in those pre-dawn hours, because if you speak to a lot of writers, they'll tell you that's the best time of day to write because that's when you're in a dreamlike state. So you're most imaginative early in the morning or even very, very late at night, depending on how you phrase it. That's why a lot of writers drink, is because they want to get into that dreamlike state. So you're onto something with getting up at 3:30 in the morning to start your writing, that's for sure.
Well, and then at least you gave me some motivation. I should start drinking more. The now,
Exactly.
what I find, Logan, is it's for me personally, it's just quiet.
Yeah.
And you can focus. And there's some days, my goal is always to write 1,000 words a day.
Mhm.
There's some days where you get 3,000 words out and you're shocked at how quick. Other days you get 3 words out. And
Right.
I don't beat myself up. And a lot of aspiring writers and authors, and they'll ask me, what do you do? What do you do? Just write it down. Just write it down and organize it later. Get up to, I don't know, 80,000 to 120,000 words, put everything together and figure it out and make it sharp.
Absolutely. Well, you've made these 2 books sharp, that is for sure. The series is called American Bloodline. The first book is called American Bloodline, The Rightful Heir Reclaims Europe. The second book is American Bloodline, The King's Curse. They are both written by Bob Nienaber, and they are excellent adventures that, at the heart of it, as Bob says, is a love story, and quite a love story it is. You'll be thrilled, you'll be enchanted, you'll be mesmerized by these books. Bob, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Pleasure is all mine, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.